All right. All right, guys. So last meeting here. This is our little current events update. But I know it's finals week, so thank you guys for coming out. The few of you are here, so we appreciate it a lot. But this one's on Biden's executive order. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. But on Tuesday, he signed an order to increase the minimum wage to 15 an hour for federal contractors. And it's about like 390,000 of them NBC identified. So federal contractors buy and sell products for the government, basically. And he's going to kind of index those with the rising cost of living over time. So they also identified that there's about a $3,000 increase on average in yearly salaries, which doesn't seem like a ton, but it kind of has a bigger impact than you may think at first glance. So we'll talk about that after. But I just included this picture. So this is me, as you can see, with Joe Biden in February this past year, or right before the pandemic, actually. So yeah, but I just wanted to include that. Dapped him up. He's a cool guy. So, but yeah, so the large impact, I guess, can kind of be broken down on an anecdotal level and a larger like macroeconomic business level. So for the anecdote here, there's this woman, Lakeisha Preston, who's 35 years old. Reuters did this interview, so which I thought kind of visualized it very well. So she lives in Mississippi and she makes $14.34 as a government contractor. She works 40 hours a week, so this kind of equates to an extra about $100 a month. But she said that it's going to be pretty much the sole factor that's going to help her move out of her parents' place, and she has a 4-year-old son. So this is huge, obviously, for her. So I thought it would be cool to kind of visualize that on an anecdotal level, but also on more of an macroeconomic and business scale. So the big thing, obviously, is the executive order sets a trend. So obviously, this is only impacting about 400,000 government employees, but it sets the trend for the future, right? Because we'll have President Biden wants to increase the minimum wage for a lot more demographics and groups. So it kind of sets the trend for the future as a lot of as Congress is kind of going to start to put this towards the top of the policy chain, so on the agenda. It has a bigger racial impact, obviously. So, more disadvantaged groups on a racial basis are going to be impacted proportionately with a bigger, increase in the minimum wage. So there's going to be a bigger impact there. Next are kind of offsetting costs, operational costs. So, it's kind of different models are going to run different predictions using different factors as to how this is actually going to affect the economy, but it'll certainly raise operational costs, especially for small businesses that are trying to get off the ground. So it makes it a little bit more difficult because they actually have to pay their employees $15 an hour, which can sometimes be a stretch, especially when their profit margins are going to be a little bit thinner. So, and in addition, though, however, there's going to be an increase in the spending in the local economy. So Market Watch kind of identified that with an increase of $15 an hour in wages, people are inevitably going to spend a lot more of that money. So as we looked at before with this anecdote, $105 a month, this woman identified to go solely towards paying her bills. But that's before she actually got the money. So obviously a lot of it will go to her bills if she's financially responsible, but it's inevitable that, it will increase spending in the local economy. So this can kind of, work back to these small businesses and help them with their operational costs and kind of increase the revenue a little bit. But it also kind of ties in with our goal setting over time. So as we said before, like this executive order sets a trend for the future. President Biden, I'm not sure if you guys are watching his early campaign rallies and his speeches and stuff like that, but he really wanted to increase this minimum wage, especially over time, and get it onto the policy agenda a lot, with a lot more pressure for Congress. So it's a big goal for him over time. And obviously it's not something that can happen right away, but, we'll make, slower progress towards it. So it's a big thing to be setting goals. We talked about this a little bit in presentations in the past. It's huge for businesses and multi-level corporations to be setting goals. So Abby's going to talk a lot about that. I know she has a great presentation, but if you don't have any questions, that was our current events updates. We can let Abby proceed, but yeah.
Go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you guys see this? Good. Okay, sweet. So hi everyone. If I haven't met any of you before, if you haven't heard my name is Abby Jeffrey. I sent a lot of the messages in the group me, so you might have seen me there. But today I'm really excited to talk to you guys about corporate culture, just kind of exploring what that is and what that means, and then also how companies use that corporate culture to kind of set and achieve their goals. So first I want to try something out. Tell me if it works. Okay, can you guys write on this the whiteboard? Do you have the ability to select the text and add text to the screen?
I don't think so.
I just shared a whiteboard, but I don't know if it'll work. But it's not giving you additional options?
No, I think only you can do it.
Okay, just kidding. So scratch that. I'm gonna have you guys throw some stuff in the chat. So just kind of thinking about culture generally, how would you guys kind of define the culture at Indiana University? Just kind of the vibe of the school, maybe the way you felt the first time you visited, things you noticed just being a student here, just kind of general phrases and things about the culture. You can throw that in the chat. I see collaborative, that's really good. I feel like that's a really big thing in Kelly, especially with all the group projects. And you can feel free to unmute yourself too if you have anything. Communicative, competitive, that's a big one, goal-oriented. Yeah, these are really great ones. These are kind of what I was thinking about when I thought of IU culture too, especially on game days. Someone said competition. I feel like everyone gets really hyped for who's your spirit. That's a really big part of the culture here, is sports and just kind of school pride, especially within the culture of Kelly, just having pride in your school, being really driven, goal-oriented. So these are all great words. And I really think it speaks to how the culture of IU can really shape your experience as a student in the organization. So that was just kind of a little activity to get us sort of thinking about corporate culture. And the official definition of cultural in general is the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or organization. So culture really just is kind of the general vibe of an organization, a company specifically when you're talking about corporate culture. One analogy that I've heard for culture is that it's kind of like the sheet music for an organization. So you can have the best musicians, the best violinists, but unless everyone is playing to the same tempo and the same sheet music or living out the same culture, you're not going to get the result that you're really looking for. So today I'm going to be diving into 3 different elements of kind of looking at this question of what corporate culture is. First, just overall the definition of it. Second, we're going to look at different types of corporate culture. And then third, we're going to learn how companies leverage their culture in order to set and achieve goals. So first, what is corporate culture? There was a study done by Duke University at the Fuqua School of Business, and they really broke down kind of how a company functions into 2 different sectors. So first, you can see the formal institutions. And these are the institutions of a company that are more tangible and have been more widely studied. These are things when you look at the HR department of a company, you can look directly at their management practices. This is things like how people are hired and fired, how conflict is dealt with, those more formal sort of ways that things work. And then the governance, which is kind of the hierarchy of leadership within a company. So things like that. And then on the other side of that, within a corporation, corporate culture plays a really big role in how things get done, how a company operates. And this is a more informal institution compared to the formal institutions, and is comprised of the values and the norms of the organization. So when you look at the values of an organization, these are really the big picture ideas and the goals that a company really strives to achieve. So you'll see a lot of companies have very similar values, like in their mission statements, on their websites, things like leadership, diversity, sustainability, just kind of what they're striving to kind of output. And then when you look at the norms of culture, this is really the groundwork of how those values are put into action. Norms are really what differentiate companies from each other, because any company can say that they value leadership, but unless they really have those norms in place to kind of make that happen, it's not going to happen. And this is something I really encourage you guys to kind of consider, especially as like freshmen, sophomores, looking into companies that you potentially want to work for one day, or even like clubs on campus, kind of looking at their values, but then also considering the norms that they have in place, and seeing if they really are kind of living out those values on that day-by-day basis. So now we're going to examine the different types of corporate culture. And there are a lot of different theories about corporate culture and ways that you can kind of organize and define it. But one of the most popular frameworks that I was able to find was the competing values framework from the University of Michigan at their business school. And so just to kind of examine how this is broken down. On the vertical axis, we have both flexibility and stability. So companies that are more flexible are typically more open to changing their products and their processes of how they work. They're kind of always looking towards the next big thing. And they're very open to change, innovation, things like that. And then a more stable company is usually a company that has more of a predictable output and more stable processes. They're really valued based on their consistency and the uniformity of their output, rather than kind of how much they innovate and how much they change and things like that. Then on the horizontal axis, we have companies that have an internal versus an external focus. So a company with an internal focus is really devoting their time and their energy and their resources to their internal operations. So this is things like how employees work together in teams, how their internal processes and operations are going, making sure those are as effective as possible. And then a company with a more external focus is really looking more outwards towards the market, towards their competitors, and they're kind of basing their own performance and success in comparison to other companies, what's going on outside of their business, things like that. So then kind of looking at these different prototypes, it's important to remember that companies can kind of fall anywhere on the scale, but these are just the four main types that were come up with, or that were designed in this framework. So we have the clan culture first. That's really focused on collaboration. So this is a company that really focuses on mentorship, employee relationships, and employee satisfaction within a company. So things like that. When you look at an autocracy, these are the companies that are really the big innovators in the market. They're always looking to develop the new product. They want to be the first person to come up with a new technology, things like that. For a hierarchy, these are going to be the companies that are really judged on their success based off how consistent and uniform their output is. Customers come back to them time and time again because they have high quality, consistent products. So they're really focused on kind of perfecting their internal processes to make sure that they can continue to give that output. And then the last prototype that we have is the market culture. The market culture is the most competitive out of the four. They're really focused on differentiating themselves from their competitors, and their success is mostly defined by kind of their market share, their penetration of the market, things like that. So now I want to ask if you guys just initially have any kind of examples of companies that come to mind that might fit into any of these four quadrants. And I can pull the descriptions back up just so you can see that. And you can go ahead and drop it in the chat if you want to, or just kind of unmute yourself. And it is totally okay if not. When I was doing research on this, I really was not sure. Let's see, I have something in the chat. Yeah. Well, Google is a really strong example of that.
I want to add that just because there's a book called that I have in my nightstand called Principles by Ray Dalio, which I think you should all read. I can pull it out. They talk about culture a lot. It's kind of like the focus of the book. And you will find that a lot of companies, this is true pretty much everywhere, they're not usually only one of these things unless they are a hierarchy. And that is usually, that's a very highly common one. It's found in a lot of places, but a lot of places that are innovative are usually like a mix of like clan and ad hoc, or like ad hoc and market. Hierarchy is the only one that I think is kind of standoff in the way that like it's very distinct which companies have hierarchies and like where they are. Usually they don't mix with a lot of, sometimes they might mix with clan, but they don't usually mix with a lot of other things. So
Yeah.
I think it's a relevant point. And you can kind of be anywhere on this scale. Like just because you're a clan type environment doesn't mean that you're not, you know, also kind of market based. It's if I were to remake this, I were to take all these like, you know, circles and kind of put them into like a Venn diagram kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's definitely what I found in my research too. In my examples, I just kind of categorize them as being one or the other, but it is definitely very subjective based on like how you can categorize them and how they can be like multiple at the same time.
Yeah.
So I can show you guys some of the examples that I came up with.
I also think that you guys should like, this might seem a little bit boring just because, you know, it's kind of hot. At least it's really hot in my room, but like this presentation might be a little sleepy. This is really important to think about because where you like want to work is oftentimes like the culture of the company is often define whether or not you want to work there. So you should figure out which one of these like you want in terms of like the workplace environment, and then you should try to like target, you know, organizations that have those type of environments. So this is totally relevant to you guys. So if you hate hierarchy, which I do, like there are some places, mostly banks, that I just do not want to work at. So yeah, this can be helpful for you guys.
Like I know at least for me in Compass, they kind of talked broadly about like corporate culture, just like as a freshman, kind of getting introduced to it. But I didn't know specifically like what that meant, kind of like the different parts of that. But yeah, definitely important to think about. So starting with the clan culture, some really strong examples of this one are Zappos. You might have heard about that in Compass too. I know that's a big example, but they're really focused on kind of like having that positive, fun, internal like employee environment type thing. Carlos's Bake Shop is just like kind of a niche example, but definitely has a very familial clan type company culture. And then looking at adhocracy, like Cole sent in the chat, Google is a really strong example of that. SpaceX, Apple, these are really the innovators, the people who are looking to kind of push the boundaries of what's possible, things like that. Looking at a hierarchy, these are definitely the more structured companies with a very established set of kind of leadership, chain of command, and they're really judged on how consistent their output is. So good example of that is a governmental organization. I put the Department of Parks and Recreation because there's not necessarily a lot of innovation going on in that field, but they are expected to have consistent output, just like Southwest, McDonald's. Southwest and McDonald's are two that you could argue would also be a mix of market, just because they also have to really focus on competing in the market, but they are also judged on how consistent their products and their services are. And then finally, we have the market. I would say that the best example of that is Amazon. They're really focused on kind of competing with, I think Walmart is their biggest competitor right now, but really doing things the fastest and the cheapest that they can so that customers choose them over their competitors. And then the last section that we're going to take a look at is kind of looking at those specific examples of the different kinds of cultures and how companies can leverage their culture to achieve their goals. And this is kind of a process that you can even use in your own life, in the organizations you're in considering kind of organizations and companies that you want to pursue, things like that. So in the research from Duke University, they talked a lot about how you can't just have the mindset that having an effective culture is going to get you the outcome you want. You really have to start at the foundation of those formal and those informal institutions of how culture is built in a company. So the things like the values, the norms, and the process of how you can really set those goals and use culture to achieve them starts at the top with determining what your company goal is. The second step down from that is kind of more broadly looking at the values that you want your company to hold, kind of the big picture ideas, things that are important to you, your leadership team. And then at the base of this is really finding out on a daily basis, what are the daily norms that we can put in place in order to make these values happen, create that culture, and then achieve the output that we're looking to. So first, with the example of the clan culture, a company like Zappos might have a goal to have a positive work environment in order to increase employee satisfaction. A common goal of clan cultures is to have a value of open communication. And this is something that can be established through kind of a tangible routine of encouraging feedback on the procedures of the company, things like that, just because when employees kind of are able to give their feedback on their experience within a company, it really feels like their voice is being heard. And that is something that can kind of contribute to that open communication, willingness to talk through issues, and increase overall that employee satisfaction. So you can kind of see how setting starts at the top, goes to the bottom of the pyramid, and then when they're actually acted out, goes from the bottom to the top. The next example is of an adhocracy. A company like Google would have an overall goal to increase innovation and really increase the innovation of the design of their products. A value that a company like Google would have is a value of adaptability. When kind of the markets and the developing trends are kind of changing, you have to be able to adapt and be able to develop the best product that you can. And so a norm that could kind of put that into action would be to encourage idea development and allow for constructive criticism. In idea development, kind of getting that feedback and getting that criticism is crucial to kind of being able to change and develop the best product that you can. So for this next one, I'm going to tell you guys kind of the goal, the value, and then I'd like you to kind of think of ideas like initial thoughts for norms that could be set in place to make that goal and that value happen. So for a hierarchy company like Southwest, this is the most structured company in terms of leadership and things like that. They might have a goal to provide consistent world-class customer service, have evaluations. Patience is a huge thing in customer service, just kind of dealing with emotional situations and things like that. And so it's okay if not, but if anyone has any kind of like initial thoughts or maybe past experiences working in a customer service job where you had to be patient with a customer, or just kind of a procedure or role that you had to fulfill in order to be patient. Does anyone have like initial ideas for a daily norm that could be set in place? And you can unmute yourself or feel free to throw it in the chat too.
I did some work over the summer at Dunkin' Donuts, and so like customer service is obviously big, especially I did it in the Bronx in New York, so like everyone's commuting and they need their coffee, so we had to kind of figure out what norms we would set in our business in order to optimize our customer service. So I think that could be a good comparison. Obviously, on a smaller scale because it's just one store, but definitely something to consider.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely kind of like a high pressure environment. I think that a good daily norm for that is just kind of helping employees find ways to kind of keep a level head when you do have the people coming in demanding coffee in the morning. Definitely sounds kind of stressful. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? And if not, that's okay. That was a great example. Two that I came up with are to set norms that give employees proper training to handle customer service situations, and then also giving them the freedom to handle situations on a case-by-case basis. This is another kind of trend to be aware of, is employee empowerment. It's something that's really prevalent now, especially within the hospitality industry, kind of the idea that employees should be equipped with the tools to sort of handle situations as they see fit rather than being micromanaged. And then this is the last example we're going to go through before we go into a super short case forward of activity. But I would like to hear you guys' feedback on like a norm, if you can think of it, for a company like Amazon. So a goal for a market culture type company would be to differentiate themselves from their competitors. A value that a company like Amazon might have would be to be productive and to kind of be efficient in their processes. So can anyone think of just even generally a daily norm that could be set in place to kind of work towards that value of productivity?
Oh, they limit meetings to like 15 minutes. And they let people walk out if they're not productive. Kind of crazy.
That's a good one. Yeah, I've definitely been in meetings for work before that kind of felt like they could be an email. So that's definitely a good one. Okay. And so kind of building off of that, just really being conscious of employees' time. If employees feel like they're wasting their time, they're not going to want to be productive at work. So really prioritizing break time is kind of one idea that can put that into practice. And then also just kind of having employee recognition processes that really show appreciation for the hard work that they do, and really how they contribute to overall company productivity. So lastly, I have this pretty simple, straightforward team scenario. There's kind of a lot of words on the screen, but I promise it's not too bad. But basically, you guys are going to be put into breakout rooms. I think we can cut the meeting. We'll see what Jake thinks, how much time we want to do in breakout rooms, but shouldn't take too long to complete this. But you and your teammates are going to be on an organizational culture team for an apparel company. And basically what happened was the design team developed new t-shirts, set a release date for the t-shirts, but they didn't work with the operations team who would actually be responsible for kind of rolling out the products. So miscommunication there, ended up in high shipping delays, high product costs, just kind of a mess overall. So you guys' job is to figure out how to improve collaboration between departments, establish a value that could help collaboration, and then kind of just one or two ideas for a daily norm that could be put in place. You can also consider what type of company this is, what type of company culture. So if you want to take a picture of the screen, and then, yeah, Jake, whatever you think a good plan for this would be.
Seems like we have a couple people that just dropped off the call, which seems to happen a lot when we go into breakout rooms, but we have 11 people, and we could do probably, I mean, Abby, how long do you think this needs for in the breakout room? 5?
Honestly, 5-10 minutes, not very long at all.
Okay, let's just do like 7 minutes and then we'll come back and end the meeting early. All right, I'll create the breakout rooms. How many are we? We are, okay. Oh wait, hold on. Let me rearrange that. Hold on. Oh wait. One sec. Okay. There we go.
I tell you, I should get an award for taking pictures of flowers. Check my story, dude. I took this photo of this flower today on campus. It's actually like professional quality. It's crazy.
Your Instagram?
Yeah,
I'll give it a check.
yeah. iPhone 12. It's borrowed someone's phone. Ridiculous. Actually, I think the 12 Pro. And the quality can still be better. But yeah, I went to Kirkenhof in the Netherlands. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that ridiculously good? I went to the Kirkenhof in the Netherlands, and it's where all the tulips in the world come from for the most part. It's a fun time. I have a lot of photos. But yeah, I took that right behind the like the Chorus Center on campus. Yeah, I took it an hour ago. So.
All right, Abby.
Is everyone back in the main room? Okay.
Yep.
Sweet.
Everyone's back.
So if anybody feels comfortable sharing just kind of like briefly like what they talked about in their breakout rooms.
I can share.
Okay.
Who was that? Was that Varun? Okay, yeah, we were in the same breakout room together, but we had discussed that this miscommunication, probably the burden of that doesn't really fall on the lower level design team members, but probably from a mid manager or leadership position. So we think that a norm that can sort of resolve these issues in the future is when in creation of teams, leaders should not just stick to people from their own department, but employees from other departments to create collaborative teams that can keep everyone informed and people in the loop so that these issues don't happen again.
That's great. So kind of establishing that value of leadership and then having the daily norm of like structuring leadership so that it works more effectively like in the teams between the departments. I like that. Did anyone have any other ideas?
This is going to sound kind of cliche, but if you're in upper management, you have to hire people that you can communicate with and who can communicate well with you, which just kind of seems like a given, but you'd be surprised. And then, believe it or not, like you actually have to like tell people, like you have to give them time frames for how quickly you expect a response. Because some people just, it isn't in their nature to respond immediately, which sounds kind of weird, but like, yeah, this is a pretty big issue at a lot of companies.
Yeah, so like the timeliness side of like working on a team, kind of like valuing other people's time and making sure that like those procedures are put in place. Makes sense. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to share that they talked about in their breakout room? And it's totally okay if not. Well, I don't know. We just kind of talked about teamwork very like broadly in ours. Um, just teamwork and really making sure that you kind of increase the amount of like meeting time and kind of communication that happens between departments just within the design process and things like that. But overall, great job, guys. Those are some really great responses. And that is all I have for the presentation. I'm ending the meeting a little bit early, but please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Say after. There's my contact info. If you ever need anything, just reach out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I know it's almost finals week. It's finals week for some people, but yeah, we just really appreciate you guys being here.
Real talk, you guys should read this book. It's like 550 pages. You can skip the first like 150. This thing is the Bible. I don't mean to tell you that because like I really like this book. This book will change your life, and maybe You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. That will also change your life. But this book is written by a guy who has about $20 billion, most successful hedge fund in history. He's the GOAT in every sense of the word, and he's kind of runs a cult in Connecticut. So, well, not Bridgewater is kind of a cult in all honesty. But yes, it talks a lot about culture. Moral of the story: hire the right people. You hire the wrong people, the penalties are huge. So, yeah. In terms of business books, like you should all actually read this. I've read a lot of books, and this is probably the best of them all, in all honesty. So, and there are books written by other billionaires that I have in that closet. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Cole, as usual. Never fail to keep me entertained. But thank you guys. I will be in touch in the group meet for possible executive position openings for the fall semester. So stay tuned for that. And we will be in contact for what we're going to be doing over the summer and plans for the fall semester. So it was a great semester. Thank you all for coming to all the meetings, and we'll be talking with you soon. Have a great night, guys.